Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another handsome episode of Made Man, your favorite Mad Men podcast where, ladies and gentlemen, I just finished watching Season 4, Episode 5, The Chrysanthemum and the Sword. Notice how I slowed down when I said chrysanthemum, because I did not want to screw up saying chrysanthemum. I will probably screw it up some more. The Chrysanthemum and the Sword is a book title. I believe that has to do with maybe it has to do with World War II or it has to do with Japanese culture. I'm not sure, but it is related to the kind of the overall theme or the overall storyline of this episode. There is a new client possible, but not everybody at Sterling Cooper Draper Price is really happy about it. And Don spent a little extra time with his children. Well, a little extra time, as little as possible, it seems like. And we got a little extra time with Sally Draper, and it was quite uncomfortable. So why don't we just go through everything. Let's get the Sally Draper stuff out of the way now. And I still hate you, Betty Draper, Betty Francis, whatever your name is. I know who you are. I want to say the episode started with Don's kids, but I don't think it did. I literally just watched this episode, so I'm already forgetful. I mean, there has to be something wrong with me where I watch an episode and I literally forget how it started. I think it started in the office. It had to have started in the office. But let's go to Don's home life. Don had Bobby and Sally Draper over. He doesn't ever seem to see his little baby son Gene. That kid just stays home. He's getting bigger, but he had Bobby and Sally over for the weekend. Because that's what divorced dads do. They have their kids over at their apartments for the weekend. And he goes out. He literally says, I got my kids here, and now I don't see them that much, and now I'm going to go out on a date with the girl from Pitch Perfect, the girl he dated before. They went to Benihana's, which is a Japanese steakhouse that is still around today. And I can't really get there. You know what? Yeah, I'll keep going. So he goes to Benihana's. We'll get there later. But while he is there, the neighbor, the nurse, the young woman that I thought was going to be a conquest of Don Draper, she was babysitting the kids. And she's watching TV with Bobby while Sally goes to the bathroom, comes out, and her hair is cut. Now, Sally was not happy that this girl was there. She did not like her dad going out on a date. She was not happy about that. And she acted out by cutting her hair. She then, the babysitter is like freaking out. She tried to clean it up, but really didn't do much of a job. Sally asked the babysitter if her and her dad do it. And Sally's like, what are you talking about? She says, I know the man pees inside the woman. I was like, yeah, that's right, Sally. You're so advanced. That's exactly what happens. And Don comes home later, and he gets pissed at the babysitter. It's like, I'm sorry, this kid can go to the bathroom by herself. I guess you should have wondering what she was doing in there all this time. And so he's like, I'm going to get shit from her mother. And he gets mad at her. He gives her money. She's like, no, I can't accept. He's like, consider it severance, meaning you're not babysitting my kids anymore. So he brings the kids home, and of course, Betty's hanging out with Henry Francis, and I'm trying to turn the volume up here. And there's little baby Jean, and the kids show up, and she has a hat on, and Betty just looks at her like, take your hat off. Takes it off, sees the hair, and immediately she slaps her across the face. And I just realized how effing much I still and forever will hate Betty, Draper, Francis, whatever the hell your name is. I hate you. So as much as Don was a terrible husband to you, I don't want you to be happy. That's mean, but it's true. I even feel like Henry Francis is like, whoa, you are nuts. And as much as I'm attracted to you and find you very fascinating, well, maybe I should talk like the way he talks. Betty, as much as I think I am, very sexually attracted to you, you're also a bit crazy. When he slapped her, you could see the look on his face like, whoa. Dawn got mad at Betty, and really they just kind of yelled at each other, and she's like, blah, 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 blah. She's embarrassed about the whole thing, or she was pissed about the whole thing, and said she's not going to her sleepover. And then Dawn leaves, and Henry's like, listen, girls like this act out sometimes when their parents get divorced. I think what you should do is you should go upstairs and tell her you're going to take her to the beauty salon, and then tell her she can go on her sleepover. And she's like, oh, reward her? He goes, exactly. You give her what she wants, because when I divorced my ex-wife, I pretty much gave my daughter everything she wanted at all times, because I'm sure that was the right thing to do. He didn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking. So she goes on her sleepover. Let's just stay with this part of the storyline. She goes to her sleepover, and this is when I'm watching a show and going, I am extremely uncomfortable. So her friend's asleep. She's watching some young actors on the screen, and all of a sudden she starts hiking up her skirt. I'm like, how old is this effing actress? What is this? And they don't show, like all they show is her face, and they show her kind of bite her lip. And the mother of the friend walks in, freaks out. She's like, I'm not doing anything. They drive her home all the way back to her house. The sleepover was canceled, and then she tells Betty that she was playing with herself, and we don't do this in this house. And Betty was mortified. Betty was embarrassed. She apologizes. She goes upstairs. She yells at her, oh, excuse me, it's late. It's late. I'm tired. I waited. I had the day off today, and I waited till 9:15 to start watching the show tonight. I apologize. It's my own fault. But she's like, I didn't do anything. And she's like, you don't do that in public or in private. Excuse me. And she's like, she goes, you don't lie to me, I'll cut your fingers off. Betty is a crazy person. I've been saying it for months now, and I will stick with that. It's all about her. She calls Dawn. Well, Henry says how he thinks it might be a good idea for her to see someone. And Betty gets isn't really into it, and she does reveal that she saw a psychiatrist and thought it was a joke. And well, it's because her psychiatrist was calling Don Draper. But Henry was saying that his daughter saw one and it was very helpful. So he must obviously talked Betty into doing it, because Betty calls Dawn while Dawn was busy reading that book, The Chrysanthemum and the Sword. He was doing that for work, and we'll get there. But I want to get this out of the way. She calls Dawn, and Dawn's like, what's going on? And she goes, we think she needs to see a psychiatrist. He's like, for cutting her hair? He goes, no, there's something else. He's like, well, what was it? She was masturbating. He's like, what? She was doing it at her friend's house. Was it a boy or a girl? What's the difference? She obviously she's mortified. Dawn was like, doesn't think she should see a psychiatrist for it. But he seems to just be kind of angry, and she blames Dawn. Like, you can't blame her for the life you have. The way things are with your having all these women there. It's like, what are you talking about? Because you brought another man into our house, into your bed. She says, that's my husband. He's like, how many women have you had? And they're just arguing. And she's like, the psychiatrist wants to meet both of us. So I'm just letting you know that. Goodbye. Dawn actually ends up talking to the woman who is like kind of the researcher, the one who does studies for them. The actress is the mom on Stranger Things. Talks to her for a bit about going to psychiatrists and well, she finds out that she's not married. She just wears the wedding ring kind of to avoid men, and talked a little bit about his kids and how he doesn't see them enough, but when he drops them off, he's relieved. And you could see there's guilt there. But remember, Don's also pretty selfish. Remember, he wanted to leave with, was it Rachel from the first season? He was like, let's just go. Let's just leave. Let's just go and start a new life. He would leave his kids behind. That's how much he wanted to get away. But at the same time, he does love his kids. So it's a weird thing. Like, his brain goes here and there everywhere. But he explained to her about the psychiatry, and she seemed to say, like, as long as she knows you love her, I think, she'll, no matter what happens, she'll end up being okay. But she does end up going to this psychiatrist, this Dr. Edner. But before Dr. Edner wants to meet Sally, she gets to meet Giant Sally, also known as Betty. Same kind of emotional maturity between the two of them. She talks to Betty a little bit, and I feel like Dr. Edna was like, oh, this Betty is, she's a little kook bird herself. She kind of made it all about herself, how, she touched herself in front of someone, and this woman's going to talk all about it and how it affects me. And it was really, and she was telling a story about how her brother had a nudist book, and her mother nailed it to the door, and how, like, the mother, just Betty having her own mother troubles. When she was talking to Dawn about the hair, Dawn, she was like, all I wanted was long hair. My mother used to threaten to cut my hair. So you see that Betty had a crazy mother herself, and now she can be a crazy mother to Sally. It's the circle of life. It's a beautiful thing. But this woman was like, I think you should see someone too. And Sally's like, oh, no. And Betty's like, no, I don't need that. Because she could see her talking about her mom, and this woman was like, oh, this is a little weird. So she's like, well, I think we should see Sally 4 days a week. And I think you should come in once a month so we can go over Sally. But I almost felt like the doctor was saying, why don't you come in once a month so I can check on you, because you're a crazy person also? And I don't mean crazy person as in mental health. I mean, like, she's a selfish sociopathic child who only cares about herself. And this woman wants to study her because it's fascinating. And she's like, will you tell me what Sally says? She goes, no, I can't do that. And that goes both ways. And so Betty was like, oh, so I can talk without worrying about anyone else hearing it. I think, like, even Betty wants it without admitting she wants it. And, Betty's really concerned about this. But who's the person who brings Sally to her first appointment? It's Carla. It's Carla, the nanny, the housekeeper. She's the one who brings them because Betty couldn't even be bothered to be there. And that's how the episode ended, with Sally going into the psychiatrist's office. I don't know how long this is going to happen. I don't know how much I cared about this part of the storyline. I like Dawn. I love Dawn. The kids, the Draper lifestyle. I almost feel like we don't need to see Betty anymore. I kind of feel that way. And I just want to stay with the people at work. But I wanted to talk about this and spend, a good 10 minutes just kind of getting through that part of the episode, because it did happen, and I'm sure things are going to be coming from this, so you can't ignore it. But let's go. That's me rewinding things. Rewind all the way back to what was actually the biggest part of the show, and that was business. That was advertising talk. That was shop talk. This is the stuff that I love. So Don got a phone call in his office. It was actually pretty funny. There was some humor in this episode with his secretary, who I can't remember the name of, but I looked it up and I thought, is this Ellen Travolta? It's not Ellen Travolta, but it's a woman who always reminded me of Ellen Travolta, and that is Daniel LaRusso's mother from Karate Kid. So I thought that was really cool to see. But Don gets a phone call early in the episode in his office from someone at the New York Times. And this reporter was looking for a comment because another guy from another place said that, they are cutting edge and they're leaving Don Draper. They're picking up all these clients that Don Draper isn't getting. So this guy works in the advertising area of the guy who called is in the advertising area of New York Times. He wanted a quote because a guy at another firm was kind of calling out Don Draper and calling out Sterling Cooper Draper Price because they were getting all their clients. And Don's like, oh, I usually don't follow what goes on to clients once we get rid of them. But he also said, I've never heard of this guy. And obviously that was not true. This guy he ran into at the Benihana restaurant. And it was there that they found out that they were both going for the same client. Because this guy was talking to Don and kind of rubbing it in that, hey, yeah, we're up and coming, and we're going to be up with you pretty soon because we're going for the same client you are. Who is that client? It's Honda Motorcycles. Pete is bringing in possibly Honda Motorcycles. They're not happy with their current business. They only have 50% of the market. They want more. And I think it was Honda that wanted that. And the thing is, Honda is a Japanese company. It's the 1960s, and it's only been 20 years since the end of World War II. Well, Roger Sterling hears this, and he pretty much flips out. He does not want to work with Japanese. He lost a lot of good people and a lot of friends in the war, and he did not want to deal with them. Did not want to ever work with them. He didn't trust them or anything like that. And it doesn't matter. They were like, we're still definitely doing this meeting. When Roger left, he's like, we're not doing this. And Cooper's like, don't listen to him. Just keep Roger away from it. We're still doing this. They end up bringing Honda in for a meeting, and things are going pretty well. And Honda has this thing, what they want to do. They want presentations from each and every group that they're going for. I think there were 3 of them in total. And they give each of them $3,000 to create this presentation. Oh my goodness, it's so late and tiring. They give them $3,000 to create this presentation. And they have to kind of just not finished work, but give them what they have. And Roger comes into the office, sees the meeting is happening, comes in and basically hijacks the meeting. There's 3 guys there. 2 of them speak Japanese. One of them is the translator, and Roger's just a complete jackass, saying very offensive things to them, very mean things, and only one of them understands them. But you can pretty much tell from the body language. I mean, he used the word Jap, that he used that term, so I'm sure, that they understood that. I mean, geez, that was pretty offensive. Even me saying that felt weird. I don't like saying that. So, but he pretty much made it, I'm not going to say difficult, but pretty close to difficult. And he storms off, and they leave, and they try to make peace before leaving. Don goes into Roger's office and be like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he's like, "I lost a lot of good men." And then Pete comes in, barges in, and starts yelling at him, and it's like, you don't want us to bring in clients. You don't want us to bring in money, because every time we bring in another client, that means one less dollar has to come from Lucky Strike. And that means that Lucky Strike, we're less dependent on Lucky Strike, and we're less dependent on you. And Roger throws down his drink and tries to charge at him, and Don gets between them, gets Pete out of the room, and he looks at Roger and goes, "He's right." And he is right, because Roger is hijacking things, being very personal. He talks to Joan about, she's like, he's like, I knew this guy that was on this battleship, and he was a poet. And she's like, I don't want to hear it. He's like, these, when did what was it? When did forgiveness trump loyalty? Meaning, like, why should he forgive this? And she's like, my husband could be going off to war soon. He's like, great. And what would happen if your husband came back and his friend went to a Vietnamese doctor? How would you feel then? Or Pete went to a Vietnamese doctor, something like that. And, Joan didn't even respond with that one. But she was like, it was 20 years ago. You went to war. You won. You wanted to make the world a better place. You did that. He's like, did we? She goes, I have to think so. She has to think so because there's a good chance her husband's going off to Vietnam. So they're thinking, this is where I thought this was kind of the cool part. I love schemes. I love when businesses have schemes or criminal organizations have schemes and plans that have to be done. And this is where they came up with an idea. They only have $3,000 to do something. They thinking about shooting a commercial, but you can't afford a commercial for $3,000. You just can't do it. So he's like, we don't. And then Don had the idea of we don't have to shoot a commercial. We just have to make sure that our competitors think we're shooting a commercial, so that they will then try to shoot a commercial. Because Honda did not want a finished product; they just wanted a presentation, and they thought it would be dishonorable. So Don went through this whole. They went through this whole rigmarole. That's still a word. I love it. Where they brought in the director who works for the other firm and tried to book him, but they can't. And they even gave him storyboards, everything, and that didn't work. Then they had Don accidentally, knock on the door, just happened to go by with a Honda motorcycle. Then they showed them at a studio. It was Peggy and that other guy there. I don't think it was P. I think it was the guy that she works with in creative. And they were bringing the motorcycle into the studio, and the other guys are trying to get in. He's like, whoa, this is a closed set. And Peggy's just in there, not filming anything, just driving around for a little while, just so they hear what's going on. So then they thought, there's a commercial being shot, so we have to shoot a commercial. So they go ahead, they shoot a commercial. They go to the presentation, and Don goes by himself, and the guy comes out, and he's like, oh, this presentation went great, all these different things I showed them, it was awesome. And Don went in and goes, she goes, they're like, where's everybody else? Don goes, they're not coming. He goes, in fact, we are resigning from our thing. You said you didn't want a finished product, and I feel like you're not playing by your own rules. So he writes them a check back for $3,000. These guys seem to value honor, and Don tricked another firm into doing something that was against the rules, that then if they allow that, it would be dishonorable. So he tried to be honorable and say, here's your money back. We, thank you for your time. And lo and behold, that worked. Now turns out that Honda was never leaving their clients, their motorcycle, with the advertising agency for the motorcycle, but they're starting to get into cars. And it looks like they're going to get the work for the cars. Now their cars seem to suck now. They said they're basically motorcycles with doors, but they look nice. They have windows so you can look out before you crash. I don't know, something like that. But that was pretty much. I feel like am I leaving anything out? I mean, there's little details I'm leaving out, like. The guy at the other firm sent them Japanese sake to rub it in, that he was going to get the Honda job. That was the sake Don actually opened and drank with that woman while he was talking about his kids. I mean, that's it. I think. Oh, Roger apologized, and Pete actually stood up to him, which I thought was pretty ballsy, but also he has to. It was unprofessional of Roger, and he apologized for that and he will never get in the way of a client again. It was funny when he left, Pete was like, oh, his wife has been really ill and he's been drinking a lot, just trying to make excuses, anything. But Pete was pissed. He's like, I have a kid that's coming along the way. We need all the money we can get, and I think that covers it. I'm sure I left some things out, but really, there was a lot of, Roger really having a conflict of interest with his client, trying to get people to see his way, and no one really did. Everyone else was ready to move on, and I think it's hard for him to move on. And Don having issues with his kids. Bobby seems to be doing fine, but Sally, she's coming of age, which is a terrific song by the rock band Damn Yankees, if you have a chance to look that up. But she seems to be growing up. She wants to look older. She wants her hair to be cut more like the neighbor, so she looked older, so maybe her dad would pay a little more attention to her and think of her as more mature. But she's getting more mature because I don't want anybody else. When I'm at a party, I sleep over, I touch myself. That was the Rembrandts? That wasn't the Rembrandts. I forget what they were called. That was a catchy song. But don't let Betty Draper hear you singing that song, because she will threaten to cut off your fingers, and she will slap you in the face. And then she will talk about herself when she is going to a client, going to her daughter's secretary. She basically talks about herself and everything that she has to go through, because Betty is selfish. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I've covered everything. I really, really do. Really do. Really, really big. Really big. Really big. All right. That was me going from the what's his name? Well, the Beatles were on that show. I can't even think of it. Right into a terrible Matthew McConaughey, which I can't even say his last name right now. I'm tired, ladies and gentlemen. I'm tired. But you know what I'm not tired of? I'm not tired of you. And I'm not tired of Mad Men. This was a great episode, and it shows a lot of... Anytime there's office stuff, I love it. Again... I can pretty much do without any of the Draper family household stuff now. I got to have it because I got to see what happens with the evolution or devolution of Don Draper. But, I care more about the people at work. I do. Oh, also that other firm, they're like, bring in the guy who worked for Draper. And it was that young fella. I'll never remember his name, but they were the two guys who worked together. It was the French guy who was like, I'm a homosexual, and this guy worked with him. It was his little I call him like his little buddy. He now works at this new firm. He talked about Don being a genius, and this guy got pissed off. He's like, you ever talk about me like that? But I think that covers it. Yeah. I feel bad for Henry Francis. He got the wife he wanted, but is that the wife he really wants? Well, I don't know. I feel bad for Don Draper. Not really. I don't know. But I feel bad for Roger. He was in a weird... You can't underestimate or undervalue what he went through as a character. I mean, come on, it's not real. But what guys like that went through, and then having to see a short while later all these products and services and companies thriving, after 2 decades earlier, people killing each other and we dropping bombs. I mean, that's got to be a mind trip for this guy. But I think that's it. I think I'm ready to stop talking about it. And the quicker I get done talking about it, the quicker I get it up to you, the great listener. Or you know what, listeners, because there's more than one of you. There has to be. I know there is. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for listening to my podcast today. Even though you're probably listening on Saturday, I put it out on Happy Friday. I just wrote that song. Isn't that cool? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, my name is Mike. You can find me on Twitter at MadeManPod, and the website is fansnotexperts.com/MadeMan. If this is the first time you're ever hearing us, we are available on every single podcasting service you could think of. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn. We're probably on more services than we are people listening to them, but that's okay. I don't care. This is fun doing it, and I'm doing it for you, the listener, the coolest, smartest, happiest people on earth. Ladies and gentlemen, I also do another podcast I'd like to tell you about right now. I'm going to do a cheap plug for Geek Mentality. My 6th annual movie month will be coming on June 1st, so if you search us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, Geek Mentality, you can find us, and hopefully you can subscribe, at least for June, where I do 30 movies, 30 podcasts in 30 days. It's really exciting, and it's the one project that I've stuck to for 5 going on 6 years that really helps me catch up on movies. I can't wait to get to do that, but don't worry. Every Friday in June, you'll still be hearing from your favorite Mad Men podcast. And I want to thank you. And although there goes my voice right into movie studio announcer. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for allowing me to go on this journey. And I thank you for coming on this journey with me as I venture to explore the world and thrive to achieve the level and status of Made Man.
Fans not experts.